This is typically in the form of 3.5-inch money. Oh, sorry about that. What's up, guys? Big D Wiz, oldschoolsarea.com. Today, along with,
High Five Vega. We're here with episode 2 of 12 Volt Talk. We're going to talk about how we got into car audio and what is old school.
and this will be a fun topic, my friends. This is something that may not be in this book, but we're going to talk about it anyway. I am Derek, also known as Big D Wiz, the old school stereo master. And my channel is youtube.com/BigDWiz. Do all kind of amplifier dyno tests, all that kind of good stuff. And Mr. Vega and I have put together podcast episodes for you guys. Today is episode number 2, and we're excited about bringing you some more content. What do you have to say, Mr. Vega? Who are you?
Okay, I'm High Five Vega. Most of you don't know, but you will know, hopefully. I do YouTube videos as well, do a little DIY type of stuff. And just have a lot of fun. But today, what the people want to know is how did you get into car audio, Big D?
So that's a good question, Mr. Vega. YouTube.com/HiFiVega. I think you forgot to say that. So make sure
Yeah,
you
I
guys
forgot the most important part.
go subscribe to his channel. So the first question that was pondered by Mr. Vega is, what was my first real car audio system? How did I get into car audio? Well, those of you who may have listened to a recent podcast I was on with Everyday Audios, I talked about this. But those of you who didn't, we're going to talk about it tonight for you for the first time. So my experience was 1987 or 88. I think it was 87. My brother, RX-7, so 1979 RX-7, a little small hatchback. If you guys haven't seen a first generation RX-7, search Google and find it. They're pretty small. It's like a CRX that's sharp. He had 6 subs in the back, 2 12s, 2 10s, 2 8s, all powered by Rockford Fosgate Punch 150. Alpha Sonic amp on the front, mids and highs. He had 2 6.5s, a 5, and a tweeter in the door. And he had the really cool Sony CD player. He had the half-den cassette deck, which I've done a video about that. Check my channel. We'll put the link below. I'll show you how that works. It's on a little tray. Very slick. And also the XE8 EQ with the jumping little lights. So his car was like a disco on wheels, and it was just the coolest thing. Me being, a young kid, I wasn't able to drive yet, but that was awesome. So that just kind of changed me. What about you, Mr. Vega? What was your first experience?
All right, so the first thing that I remember is an old VW. It was a Bug, and it had 2 18-inch Rockford Fosgates. I don't even remember the series. I don't remember the year. And I'm wanting to say it had a LA Sound amp on it. And, I was like, wow, I've never heard of anything like this at a concert anywhere. And I was like, I got to have it. I got to do something like this.
So where did they fit those 18-inch subs? Were they actually in the back seat? Did they take up the whole back seat? Were
Yeah,
they walled?
there was, it was a wall. It's the first wall I ever seen. But it wasn't a wall. It was just a big box sitting there. It wasn't trimmed out or anything.
Okay. I was gonna say I don't know how you'd fit 18s in the because those VW Beetles
Yeah,
you had
and
to
it
put
was
in the
it was
front.
even angled somewhat like it wasn't just a flat. It was kind of like this because I don't know if they could even fit them side by side like this.
Probably not. Those cars are pretty
Yeah,
small.
yeah,
So it had a probably what 200-watt amp on those 18s, something like that.
yeah. But it sounded more like 10,000 to me.
Man, big subs in big boxes had huge efficiency, and people could run 200-watt, 100-watt amps, which nowadays people would laugh at.
Right.
But you have to remember, we didn't have, subs with 2 subs capable of doing 150 dB like you have today, and some people do it with 1. But, you know, you were compared to a factory system which was junk back then. So it didn't take a lot. And I'm not saying that these systems weren't impressive, because they were, and they still kind of are. But the
Yeah.
fact that we didn't have a lot to compare it against back then.
Right. And then today it's a little everything's just cranked up to 11.
Cranked up to 11, and the prices today are so low that you can
Yeah.
get a 3,000 watt amp today for the price of a 200 watt amp. Back when we were in car audio and started out. So anyway,
Yeah.
that
Dollar a
was our.
watt. It was
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said it was $1 a watt back in the day. Most everybody remembers that.
At least, even more, and
Yeah, for the high quality ones, you are definitely looking at $2, maybe even $3 a watt.
several dollars per watt. That's right. So, our first car audio purchase. I'll let you start on that one. What was your first car audio
Okay,
purchase?
I've got notes here because I didn't want to forget anything. I'm bad about that. As noted by me forgetting to mention my channel. Okay, Crunch CR10s in a box, a ported box with piezo tweeters. And then I'm just going to jump in to my first system because this was my first system, a 1992 Chevy Celebrity station wagon. I unhooked the rear hatch door speakers, extended the wires, hooked them up to the Crunch 10s. That was my first system.
Sweetness. Hey, man. It works. It works.
Yeah.
So how'd that sound?
Like today, me? Or the day I bought it?
Back then, man. That was your
I
first
was,
system.
oh
You
man,
were probably
I was feeling it.
super proud of that, weren't you?
Oh, dude, we took it to the lake. We turned the box around. I had as many people as I could fit in that station wagon, and we just jammed it. Distortion, it didn't matter. You just turn it up as loud as it'll go.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good times. So
Yeah.
so my first car audio purchase and system, I'll do the same as you did. Actually, my first. So after the experience with my brother's system, and knowing when I was 15 that I was gonna have a car. My parents were letting me drive one of their cars for a while, but they also said I could put a system in it. So, you know, my mind spins and I'm thinking about how can I get money to buy, whatever, all this equipment I want to buy. I had magazines, which you guys know I collect old school car audio magazines, all of them. But back in the day, super magazine nerd, because we didn't have the internet back then. You didn't have any way to reference stuff, to see other systems, things like that, other than looking at magazines. So I would, dive through the magazines trying to plan out. I've got pictures in notebooks, and I'm sure you do too, about
Yeah.
system layouts and what am I going to do and how much is it going to cost to
Right.
put together this system versus that one, and will I have enough money? So the very first thing I bought was the Sony CDX 7520 CD player head unit. I never, I take it back. I had a tape deck that my brother let me use for like a month before I got the Sony, but the Sony was the first purchase. Back in the day, in 1990, this Sony CD player was one of the cheapest. I don't think it was the cheapest, but it was one of the cheapest CD players you could buy for a car, and it was $3.99. No, $4.99 retail. I got it for 400, so I got it for $3.99 because my brother knew the guy that owned the shop, and he gave me a discount.
And
So I
he
paid.
bought two 12s, two 10s, and two 8s.
Well, that was years ago. But so $400 for a CD player head unit. Now think about that in today's terms. Of course, you can still spend that much or more today, but you're getting a lot of features. This is basic CD, FM, AM. It didn't have any aux inputs. It didn't have anything fancy. It was just CD.
So wait, if that
So
was a pullout, right? Too.
no,
It wasn't even a pullout.
the 7520 was the fixed unit. The 7560, I think, was the pull-out version. So it was the same
Okay.
chassis and all that. It's just different as far as the fixture. So that was $400. Then had to decide, well, what subs and amp am I going to go with? And the same shop that gave me the deal on the Sony had the MTX Blue Thunders. They had just come out, and there had just been a test in car audio and electronics about the best 10-inch subs. You probably remember that one, right?
Best issues were the comparisons and shootouts. I love them.
Exactly. So you guys who harp on kicker, the kicker competition subs back then were very good speakers. The MTX were very good. I don't remember Petra's. There's a few other ones in it. They all did a great job. It was not like any of them were bad, but the Blue Thunders came out on top. And I talked to the guy, and they were retailed for 120 a piece, and he gave me 60 a piece. So I got two of them for 120 bucks, 10-inch Blue Thunder subs.
Nice.
So that, we're still talking, $520 already. And 15-year-old kid mowing grass all summer, saving every bit of money I can. Then it was time to get the amp. And the amp, I don't mean to be going on so long here. Hopefully I'm not dragging this on too much. But okay, so I'll keep going. Sometimes
I'm enraptured here.
Okay, so sometimes I get caught up in my stories and I keep talking. But yeah, amplifier. It's like, what do you do? There's so many out here. I was looking for, since it's my first amp, I'm looking for something that's kind of budget, but I got two tens, so I wanted them to kind of, sound pretty good. So the first one I got was a Delta Sonic D360, which was 80 by 4, 80 watts by 4, and I thought, well, I can make that work, 80 watts per sub, and then I'll run the other 80 to the front speakers. Yeah, that didn't work so good. So the back then the amplifiers, they couldn't run 2 ohms bridged, and these were 4 ohm subs, and if I could have done it over, I should have got 8 ohm subs, so I could have run it 4 ohm bridge, because that's what all the amps back in the day wanted, was 4 ohm bridged. So the guy was nice enough at the shop to take it back, because I think he sold me that amp for like 300 bucks. So again, we're still counting up the change here. It's a lot of money I had to save. Every Christmas, I actually skipped lunch. I don't know how many days, Rob. My dad would give me money to eat lunch at school, $2, $2.50, whatever it was. I would watch people eat lunch and sit over there like, man, that looks good, but I need some stereo equipment. Food ain't important.
Let me hit you with a little anecdote, wherever how you say it. My son does the same thing to buy sneakers nowadays.
See, that's hardcore right there. That is interest. I'll keep talking. You've got somebody behind you that's trying to come in the door, so check her out. I'll keep going. So so the story is we're continuing with the story with the amplifier. So went back to the shop, the guy that gave me the deal on the amplifier, and I was like, this 80 by 4 amp is not really working with my setup. I want to do something different. Well, he said, well, we've got this Alpha Sonic, which is a sister brand of Delta Sonic. You can get the 2100 version, which is 100 watts per channel, and then I'll give you this Delta Sonic D40, which is it was a very small, like 18 by 2 RMS amplifier for the front speakers. I was like, man, that's a deal. I'll do that. So I got the Alpha Sonic 2100 and the Delta Sonic D40, and that was my first setup. And again, if you go, we'll put a link in the description of the YouTube video. If you're listening to this on a podcast, we'll try to figure out a way to put the links in that, or put it on our webpage, 12vtalk.com, which is still in the works. It may forward to the YouTube channel for right now, but it will eventually have its own website. So yeah, the Alpha Sonic 2100, Delta Sonic D40, all that equipment, you're talking right around $1,000. So that's a lot for a 15-year-old kid, starving, right, not eating lunches, mowing grasses, finding out what I could do from neighbors, washing cars, everything to get equipment. But like you just talked about your son, when you really want something bad and you're not given everything, whatever you want you can have,
right,
then it really forces you to sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of still run that old school mindset. My daughter shared a meme with me the other day, and it said, how much was your allowance when you were young? And it said, me, I was allowed to live there.
That's right. I mean, you get food, their parents fed you, and they had a place for you to to sleep at night, and you had to do stuff around the house, and that's exactly what it was for
Yeah.
me. But it's good. It's good to instill good work ethic. Although this is off topic a little bit, I think it's
All right.
important nowadays. A lot of people, since you have credit cards, a lot of people don't understand the value of money, which is a bad thing. Kids, if you're watching this and you're running up your credit card bills, don't do that. Save your money, buy what you want as far as stereo equipment. You'll be much better in the end, because if you build up huge amounts of debt, then you'll never
Yeah.
get caught up. So
Yeah. Yeah. Don't go on the dropping hertz and do the pay later. Don't do it.
right, it is very tempting. Oh, I only have to pay $59 a month. Don't do
Yeah.
it. It is a
No.
bad
Never.
road to go. Save your money. You're going to appreciate it much more when you do that.
And all
And
this fits in with our next topic, which is the old school topic, which we'll get to later.
that's right. We'll get to it. Let's see. I think we've got. So what, Robert? What was your first real system? And what I mean by that is, one that you maybe have planned out. We talked about your first system and that setup, but you had to do some more research, and after you played around with some stuff, you put together a serious, or maybe not a serious system, but you put one together that actually sounded a lot better once you understood more about car audio. What system was that?
Okay, so the system that I was proud to show off, I was proud to show off the first one, but I didn't know what I was talking about then. And at that point, I had done more research. So I started off with a Clarion tape deck with, I don't remember the model number, it had the motorized face on it. And I'm wanting to say I bought that secondhand, so I paid like 150, 200 for it. And then let me look up. I've got it down here. I knew I'd forget if I didn't. Okay, and then also I had Clarion 4x6 plates because I had an S10. I had an 87 S10 Tahoe. I had them up on top, and I didn't have door speakers at the time. I didn't have money for them. And I got a Punch 225-2 second hand, the one with the gray with the gold end bells, and I had a 12-inch RF Punch DVC in a custom built box by the shop that I purchased a sub from, and that was actually one system that I was actually proud to show off. I had nice bass, it sounded good. Of course, I didn't have no mid bass; it's just highs and lows, but
Highs and lows. It must be
yeah.
Bose, but it wasn't. That's cool, man. So going back a little bit, when I talked about my first system, I didn't talk about the vehicle, and this is a funny story too, because even back then, I was close to 6'4", but that's what I am now. In high school, might have been 6'2", before I graduated. So 6 feet plus. So the vehicle that I was given, by my dad to drive was a '78 Ford Courier, which was essentially a Mazda B1800. It's the same exact vehicle. It's just Ford, badge versus Mazda. So any of you who know mini trucks and know this particular truck, it's tiny, okay? Sitting in this thing, it had manual steering. It was a 4-speed manual transmission, but it was tight without subs behind the seat. So my brother was good at building boxes because he worked at stereo shops for a while. So we built, the box for behind the seat. But these aren't slim mount subs, although they're not huge magnets either. But the box for the subs was behind the seat. It had to have probably 4 inches of depth, because I think it's maybe 3 inches for the speaker. And man, I couldn't slide the seat back. My knees were all up in my chin trying to drive that manual steering truck. It was a struggle. So the funny part about the story that I never got to is my dad felt bad for me. He could see, poor guy, this is not comfortable. So he was driving the 1982 Nissan Stanza. You remember a
Uh-oh.
Stanza?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, so it looked like a Pinto kind of, but ours was a 5-door. It was a 4-door with a hatchback. And ooh, I was drooling about some hatchback. because I knew I had a lot
Yeah.
more space. So I called MTX. I said, look, I said, I got this vehicle. I said, I got these MTX Blue Thunder 10s. What kind of box do I need to build, to get some bass? And they said, well, how do you want it to sound? I said, I want some bass. They said, you want lots of bass? I said, yeah. They said 3 cubic feet per 10, 4-inch port, 12 inches long per sub.
My God.
I said, okay. So my brother again helped me build the box. We separated it in the middle, completely separate. We sealed it up with the caulking. 4-inch port, 12 inches long on each side. Oh my God, those 10s thumped. They absolutely thumped. All my friends that heard it said, those aren't 10s, those are 15s. There's no way those are 10s.
And this
But
is the same amp?
no. So I moved from the Alphasonic 2100 to an Orion 280GX, which I realized at the time needed a bridging module to bridge it. So I said, forget that, and I sold both of those and got the Punch 150 for my brother, because by that time he had lost interest in car audio. So the original one that he used in that very first system that I heard, he said, I'll sell it to you for 150 bucks under one caveat, that you never sell it to anybody except for me if I want it back. I was like, okay, deal. 150 bucks. That was a steal for that amp. I think he
Yeah.
paid 60 for it used, because the guy blew an internal fuse and didn't know it. So him and my dad opened the amp up and they replaced the fuse and it worked. So anyway, he still made money off the deal. But yeah, so that stanza with the 2 Blue Thunder 10s, man, I was rocking high school. I wasn't
That's
impressing
pretty
the
cool.
women with the
Yeah.
car, but I was impressing them with the system.
Yeah. It's all about the bass.
That's right, Megan Trainer.
Yeah.
All right,
So
so
in my first system, my upgrade story for that is I upgraded to a Sony ES 4 channel, and I don't remember the model number right off hand. It's a 50 watts by 4. Because I was one of those guys, like I had heard about SQ. I was always like, just make it loud. So back in those days, I thought I could just buy something that was SQ geared, and I could just make it loud. And then that's SQ to me at that time. So I got that Sony ES amp, and I bridged to the sub, and I was like, well, okay, this is only about half as loud as it was before, if even that much. But I'll tell you what, the difference in sound was actually, it was like I just flipped the switch up, and I was like, whoa, okay. I was like, yeah, this is different.
sweet. So you could actually tell the difference between the amps.
I could.
That's good. That's always a topic that everybody wants to hear. Is in fact, the guys asked me that last night. Can you tell the difference? And
Yeah.
I said I can't honestly, but I haven't done enough in vehicle testing recently with my
Yeah.
older ears to
Well, I
see
mean, I can't tell on all amps, but I could tell in these
with
two
those.
amps.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I with my blabbering, I didn't talk about my first real system. So we moved from the 1982 Nissan Stanza, and I finally was able to save up some money and actually took a loan from my dad to help me buy my first car, a 1987 Honda Prelude SI. And
Killer.
I loved it. I actually took it to Mako and got it painted because it had, I don't, you guys, if you've ever had a 90s Honda, you know what the clear coat separation problem is. Yeah, I had that. So I got it
Yeah.
painted at Mako. They did a great job. But I use those same Blue Thunder 10s in the Prelude, but I downsized it to a cubic feet and a half per sub, and then adjusted the port the same way based on the recommendations from MTX. And then I moved from the Punch 150 to a Punch 400 X4. So this is around 1995, and I always liked clean installs. I really wanted a 4 or a 5 channel amp to run everything, because I didn't want to have multiple amps and have all the wires between them and worry about dressing everything up. So I got this Punch 400 X4. It was $499, $500. I've still got the receipt. Unfortunately, I tossed the box when I cleaned up a house years ago before I really got back into this stuff. But I've still got the receipts. $499 plus tax, like $525. And I had that amp, the Blue Thunder 10s, and then I got Boston Acoustics Pro 5.4s for the front. And I have been drooling over these mids and highs for the longest time. I was a big Boston Acoustics fan. One of our local shops had them, and to me they just sounded fantastic. So I got those in the doors. I'm thinking the tweeters were up somewhere. I can't remember exactly where I put the tweeters.
I think it was Sail Panner tweeters from the factory with those Preludes.
Maybe it was. Somebody will correct us if we're wrong, but I can't exactly recall that. But so the 400X4 was 4 ohms on the front, and it was bridge mono to the 210s, which was 2 ohms mono,
So it got hot.
So it got pretty hot, but man, did it sound good. Man, did it slam. Did it SQ, turn the bass down and just listen to those Bostons. I still love those Bostons to this day. And the head unit is another fun story to tell, but I can blab on too long. I'll try to keep it short. So the Sony 7520 that I bought back in 1990 lasted for, warranty is 1 year. It lasted 1 year and 1 day. And the buttons, I don't know if you remember those push buttons. They lost their touch and the volume would stop going up and down. I couldn't adjust the settings. So I kicked myself not long after getting that Sony that I didn't get the Alpine 7903, because the Alpine back then was like the Lamborghini, Ferrari, whatever you want to call it. Literally, it was the best. As far as head units, you didn't get anything better than an Alpine back then. I mean, Clarion made good stuff too, but top of the line was Alpine. So
and they were in. I mean, on this poster back here, they were in Lamborghinis, they were in Ferraris. So.
That's right. They were factory setups in there, and so you pay big money. Yeah. But so what I did was I started looking, and I looked in a. I live in North Carolina, something called the Carolina Bargain Trader, CBT. And they had a section where they sold audio equipment. There was a 7903 Alpine in there, used. And the guy wanted $350, something like that, $350. Well, new, those were $600. So that was a good deal, used. So we drove, my dad rode with me because he didn't want me to go by myself, but we drove like an hour and a half or something to meet this guy. So pull up in this guy's yard, and we're like, are we at the right place? Because it was junk everywhere. The house was dilapidated. I'm like, I don't know. So we're sitting in the driveway, and somebody opens up the front door, and a guy just puts his hands up. I'm like, okay.
What in the world?
And I stuck my head out. I'm like, are you selling that? Are you selling the Alpine? And the guy's like, yeah, come on. So we pulled in the driveway, and he comes down the steps, and he's got this Firebird Trans Am. You know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but that joker was rust bucket funk. I mean, it was the color of rust. So we go over to the car, and he's like, it's in here. I said, okay. So I opened the passenger door. Bling! It was like a whole different world. It was like MTV Cribs when they open the front door, and they see all the bling. Dude, he had velour everywhere. He had gold covers over his subwoofers. I mean, it was bling city. I wish I had a digital camera back then and could have taken a picture of this, because in my mind, of course, my memory is probably exaggerating what it really was. But so, opened up the door, and sure enough, there's the beautiful Alpine 7903 sitting right there. And I brought a CD that had scratches on it. I said, let's see if it'll play this. So we start playing it, and it was some Telarc CD, and it played it fine. And he said, no, man. He said, let's hear this. And he put in Loverboy and played, some real stuff. He said, this is what you need to hear. And it worked fine. And I said, I'll take it. You take $300. He said, yep, I'll take it. I said, can you take it out for me? He said, I don't know how. So I said, let me go.
Car. It wasn't his car.
It might not.
reported how you received stolen goods.
And the story is on the internet now, and the guy from 1992, whenever it was, no, 91, from the Carolina Bargain Trader probably will remember this. But and I actually still have the CD player. But I was able to get out. My dad had
Keep that
some.
for evidence.
That's right. The police is coming to get you.
Yeah.
But so I got out my tools and I pulled it out for him, and I'm like, "What are you gonna do, dude?" He's like, "Well, I'm going Nakamichi," is what he said at the time.
Oh,
I'm
was he
like,
getting the
"How about
45Z or something?
you go paint the Kari?"
Yeah.
But again, he was a true audio guy, obviously, because that was his importance. He didn't care what his car looked like; he just wanted to sound good. So that was a
Right.
way long story about that, but it was just too funny for everybody not to hear because I enjoy telling it. Um, so let's move right along because I've talked too long and we need to get on to some more stuff. Maybe we'll skip a couple of those. What about your dream gear, Mr. Vega? What is your
Okay.
dream car audio gear?
So I know I've got this, and it's not. I mean, you're such a big baller, man. You're overshadowing everything I wanted or everything I had. Your first system was better than my first real system. Uh, Let me see what I had. Okay, most of my dream gear come from Crutchfield magazines. That was basically the Toys R Us catalog for me back in the day. And I wanted the Infinity Uniplane mids. You remember those?
Oh
They're
yeah,
down in France, I believe, and they were just. I dreamed about them every day, and I waited for them to go on clearance, and they never did. I never seen them in Crutchfield on clearance. And what else did I? Okay, the Phoenix Gold Outlaw. Local shop had that put up on the wall, and I was like, man, that's killer. I wish I could get that one day. Along with, I'm sure this is everyone else's, the RF 1002. At least people that were shopping when I did, was the big, chromed out. And then I've got one for an example, and the story on this one, I wanted one of these from the very day it was released, and I seen it in that car audio shop, and the local shop owner, he ended up putting this amp that I'm fixing to show you. He had it in a Jetta, and it was a full Sony ES setup. Let me grab this right here. This big beast.
oh Big Red.
Big Red, a 5-channel. Shout out to Sean for selling me that. But yeah, I finally got it, and I'm gonna run that thing in the Suburban some point. So
Sweet.
we'll see if it lives up to my dreams.
That's an awesome amp. That 4-channel one I had before, I couldn't believe how good it sounded, and it wasn't just because it was big and because it looked nice. It really did sound good.
And and at that point, I had no clue what XCS was. I didn't. To me, I had bought the 7850, and I ran that for a long time, and I was like, okay, I seen the Explode amp, and I was like, oh, this is the ES though. This is different, to my mind, which it's probably about the same as the other when you take it apart. And then it wasn't until, I mean, it wasn't until I got back into car audio that I discovered XES and everything that they've done, and they're just, they're on a whole different level.
Yeah, and a whole different price level too.
Right.
It's big money stuff. So I talk a lot about, and I've done a frequently asked questions before on my YouTube channel, and kind of talked about my dream amplifier was the Rockford Fosgate Power 1000 Terminator. Like you said, it was all chrome with, this is the one that had the LEDs in the end, and
Right.
we'll post another video link below so you guys can see it if you haven't seen that video. Um, that was just the one that was in the shop. I was in the early 90s. You were more in the kind of mid to later 90s, I think, when you
Right.
were big into it. So we separated by just a few years, but things changed rapidly back then because there were so many dynamics and so many companies coming into car audio because it was so hot back then. So everybody wanted it. So the magazines were huge. The companies were growing really fast. There was a lot of competition, a lot of innovation. But the Power 1000 was a 4-channel 150 by 4 at 4 ohms, 250 by 4 at 2 ohms, and it cost $2,695. I'll say that again. $2,695 back in 1990. And if you do the calculation for that, it's like $5,500 in today's money, something like that. Just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how anybody could afford it, but it was really that.
That's a wonder any of them sold.
It really is, and I think a lot of them were shop demo amps because I think they just put them in the cars, said this is what we can do. You get a smaller version, but it's still cool. So I think that's what happened because I can't imagine many people bought those being that price. Even at dealer discounts, they're still very expensive. But so that was the unicorn. But the things I really wanted that never could really afford because a lot of my local shops were jerks. And I like to order everything mail order because when I go into a place and try to talk to people and they had stuff at list price or more, and the area that I was in wasn't a huge car audio area, so we didn't have a lot of competing shops. They all had their own stuff. And like SoundStream, I was big into the reference series SoundStream, like the 604, the 705, those early mid-90s amps, kind of early to mid-90s. And I wanted one of their 5 channels or one of their 4 channels, and it had the insert terminals, no Molex plugs, super clean install. They always showed the guts. I was like, man, that looks impressive. That would sound so good. But the shops wanted so much money for them, and were just jerk. I didn't want to give my money to a shop that I wasn't in it with the guys who ran it. So I never got one of those, but those are still cool amps. I think those SoundStreams.
Oh yeah, they were killer. You had to adjust everything from the top in between the fins and all of that.
That's right. It's
I never had one
clean.
until later. But
yeah, super clean, and they still look nice today, and they sound great. So so that was kind of my dream gear back in the day.
So what about dream speakers? Like not subwoofers, speakers. What did you want, or did you have them in the Boston?
The Bostons were the ones I saved up a few years for because I think when I first wanted those, they were the Dot 2 series, and then the Dot 4 series came out about the time I had enough money to buy them. And so the way that a lot of that stuff worked is there was a local shop that had them, and I think they were $400 or $450 for the components. And online, you know how in the back of the stereo review they had Uncle Bob's and whatever those names, Stereo Sound, and all these places. Well, one of these places had them listed for $275.
Wow!
I was like, man, I can save over $100 getting them through this place. So I call them up. Of course, they're in Brooklyn or something, New York. And this is back in the day when they did CODs.
Oh, okay. That's been a while back.
You guys remember what a COD is? It's called cash on delivery. The UPS guy would show up with his hand stuck out. Give me your money, I'll give you your stuff. And so I ordered those Boston speakers through them and never came. So I called the company back and they're like, we don't sell those anymore. So they didn't sell them. So luckily I found another place that was like $285, just a little bit more. They were sketchy too, but I actually received them and I had to do the COD and pay them on demand or on delivery. And I got my Bostons, and I still have them today, and I have the original box that they came in. So I lusted after those. I saved up.
I do that now. I save boxes now, but back then I wasn't like you were ahead of the game. First of all, you were ordering online. Like who did that? I mean, you were.
Well, you say online, but phone orders.
Yeah, like the phone line.
Yeah, so, that's right. Online meant you got to talk to somebody. Different than today's online. Let's get that straight.
And you saved your boxes. You saved your receipts. Man, I was just like a kid. I was a kid. I just ripped that stuff open, like chuck it to the side. Like, oh man, there might have been some speaker wires or something in there I needed, but I had none of that stuff until I got a little bit older and started doing a little bit of collecting.
Yeah, I think I got that from my dad because whenever we bought stuff around the house, especially electronics, TV, VCR back then or whatever, he's like, you need to save your boxes for a year because while the stuff's under warranty, if something happens, you want to put it back in the box and send it back. But for me, it was cool to have the box because when I took the speakers out of the the Prelude, and when I got a different car, I put them in the box in the intermediate time, so that way I was able to keep them protected and everything. And plus, I just thought the boxes looked so cool too. That's why I wanted to save them. But I didn't
It's
have.
funny you say that about your dad because I guess that does pass on to your kids. Because my son sees me do that. He's seen me do it since he was little now. So now you go in his room, there's shoe boxes stacked up with his sneakers in them. That's how he stores them. So,
Yep, that's right. That's how we learn, man. Learn from the
and my,
pops.
my car audio shops locally couldn't be more different than your experience in car audio shops. I mean, I used to just hang out there and I talked to the guys working the counter. Heck, I mean, customers would come in and I was that annoying kid and they were looking at something. I was like, oh, yeah, that's you hadn't seen the Sony ES7850? It's not as good as the C90, but it's pretty good and you can get it for $500 less. So I was that kid doing that type of stuff.
So the stereo shop owner didn't ever hire you to be a sales guy.
No. And actually, I had pretty good jobs from when I was young. So I couldn't have made enough money to afford the equipment I wanted working there. I
Yeah,
guess the discount, but
yeah. Well,
I
it
was trying to spend my money on girls too, besides car audio. So
yeah, they're expensive.
yeah.
Well, I when I was in, and this is a little off topic, but it's related. So when I was in high school and I wanted to get a job and all that stuff, there was a local stereo store, kind of like a small version of a Best Buy, and you guys may have heard of Ed Kelly's. Did you ever hear of those? I'm not
No, we
sh-
didn't have
I'm
those.
not sure how nationwide they were, but they were in the southeast here, and they were a new store at the time when I was in high school. They hadn't been around very long in our area, but I would go in there occasionally. And the one time, one of the installers, which this dude, and I wish we could add in a little picture to show, but you guys remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off and his friend, what was his friend's name?
Oh my gosh! If you wouldn't ask, I might have been able to know. But oh, hold
Cameron.
on, what? And
Cameron.
wasn't that the dude that got into some trouble later with?
It might have been. I don't remember the story, but I can tell
Yeah,
you
yeah, I think it was.
this guy that worked there could have been his twin, although he was a little heavier set. But I
Yeah.
thought it was him. I'm like, is this the guy from Ferris Bueller? But anyway, so I would go in there a lot, and he was the installer. And they didn't have a sales guy at the time for car audio. And I kept going in there, and I was asking questions, and I was telling him what I was trying to do. He's like, "You come in here so much, why don't you get a job?" I was like, "Ooh, that sounds good." So he said he talked to his manager, and got me an interview. So I go in there and interview with this dude, and we're talking, and he's like, "So what do you know about car audio?" I'm like, "Well, I know a lot." I said, "I study all this stuff." He said, "Well, where's your experience?" I said, "Well, I got a big old fat stack of Crutchfields and car audio and electronics at home, and I know them, front to back." He's like, "Okay." I said, "Well, this is a sales job, right? This is not an installation. I'm not having to, do all that. Even though I understand it, I'm just not hands on to that, to that way." And he's like, "Okay." And we went on, interview and all that stuff, and then I wasn't sure. It was like my first interview. I mean, I had jobs before, but not one that it wasn't something that somebody said, "Hey, we need somebody to work," and you go after that. This was actually an official
Yeah.
job, my first official interview, and so I never got the call back. I didn't get the job. Um, it was only 6 months later though that place shut down, so I'm kind of glad I didn't. I did get a
Uh,
job at a furniture store though after that, and actually worked there all the way through college and made some really good friends. So things tend sometimes to work out, you know, the way they should, even though
yeah.
sometimes you don't think they would. But yeah, that was my experience, and again, that was a cool shop. They had Soloberic subs back when nobody else around me had Soloberic subs, and they were awesome. I love those subs.
So this isn't in our topics, but what kind of equipment was big in your area? Obviously, the big ones like Rockford Fosgate, I imagine. Uh, like, what about the boutique brands? So Phoenix Gold, Soundstream, Orion, all those were big around you.
Yeah, so we had one shop called Dashboard Stereo that sold Soundstream. They didn't sell Phoenix Gold. They sold Linear Power. Um, they sold ADS, I think. They were the preppy store, is what I kind of considered them as, because they had
Yeah,
nice stuff, but they didn't really cater to, the lower end. Of course, they had some cheaper stuff, but then the other
yeah,
shops, it was either a Rockford Fosgate shop or an Orion shop, but they were all kind of exclusive. I know they
yeah,
like to do that these days too to protect the dealers. And I've always had a problem with that because as a consumer, which is what I've always been, I feel like, you know, if I'm a manufacturer or a company and I want to provide stuff to the end user, sure, the dealers are there to be the intermediary, but my responsibility is to make the end user, the person happy, not the dealer. The dealer's responsibility is to do whatever they can do to make the same end user happy. But the fact that, we're big and bad, you're the only place that can get Rockford Fosgate, the Punch 45, 275 is what it retails for, but we sell it for 299 because they're in such high demand. They can't
wow.
they can't make them fast enough. I was on a waiting list at one time to get a Punch 45 because they
Oh
couldn't get
my
them in.
god,
It was
that's
ridiculous.
crazy.
So I ended up.
In ours, it was the two big ones. It was Rockford Fosgate versus Orion. We had the Orion shop, the Rockford Fosgate shop, and I always got along real well with the guys at the Rockford Fosgate shop because they had a few other brands that I like to mess with. But then I heard a 225 HCCA, and it was one of my buddy's systems that had it. And man, I was like, I gotta have this amp, man. This amp it's anodized red, and I can see the one behind you. It keeps looking right at me, and so I go to that shop, and the dude's a total jerk, man. I mean, we get along now because he still lives around local, but I mean, me and him got into it so many times, just over prices, over this and over that. But I did begrudgingly go Orion, you know, them through them to get Orion. That is,
Right.
but
And
they carried a couple other cool brands like they had. I didn't know about Linear Power when I started out. I'd never heard of them. They picked up Lunar, which was a boutique brand that I love now, but I wasn't aware of until then.
yeah, so hashtag not sponsored by Ryan because everybody thinks I'm in
Right,
Ryan's
right,
pocket. But you're right, and I talked about it before about dream equipment. The 225 HCCA for me back in the day was something that I really wanted. Again, we didn't have any local dealers that would actually deal with you. I think these were 599 retail, and
yeah,
I talked to some guys in our Facebook groups that bought these back in the day, and they were like, "Oh, I could get them every day for 320, 350." I was like, "If I could have
yeah.
got one of these for 320 or 350, I would have got one or bought two back then." But
And I think we were paying 400 even here, and
see,
used,
and
150.
yeah, I mean, that's great, and I just couldn't get them at that price. But even after all that, and after all the hype of these are still these are great amplifiers, and I can see why they sold so many of them because put two of these in a system and look at the system of Jason Williams
Yeah,
pickup truck. We'll put that one in the link below. He had two of these digital reference 225 HCCAs running four 15s, but only one amp was running the four 15s. The other amp was running the mids and highs. He had Soundstream mids and highs in the front. But man, we went to a show in Wake Forest, North Carolina, and he drew a huge crowd, and they're like, "Oh, what kind of amps you got?" He's like, "They're 25, they're 50 watts a piece. I got two of them, 100 watts total." Those guys are like, "What?" And they sit in there, and they would be like, That is insane. That old school
Yeah.
rocks. So, yeah, I mean, Amp Dyno shows 350 watts or so at 1 ohm bridged. We thought it was more back in the day, but these really can put out some power, and they
And they
sound
sound
good
good.
too. They sound good even at low impedance loads.
Yeah. And
But
Jason Williams, he had a true mini truck. That's a cool system. He had the tweets in the dash, or it was, I don't know if he had speakers or tweets, but
the tweeters
yeah, he had
were
a.
they were in the AC vents.
That's right, the AC
Yeah,
vent.
go
Yeah,
back and watch that video because it is cool. It's one of my favorites, and it wasn't hard work. A lot of videos just spend hours and hours. This one I just walk around, and he didn't want to be interviewed, unfortunately. And that
yeah,
if you know Jason, he's not somebody that's ever short on words. So you would think he would talk because I'm like, dude, tell me about your
yeah.
system, what you did, because he built things start to finish. I mean, he even tore the truck apart. In fact, the truck's apart right now, and he's working on getting everything back together and rechroming parts. And he's super busy with the other stuff that he does, but he wants to rebuild it. Um, and he's a talented guy. He does most of the stuff himself. But I couldn't get him. I was like, I want to hear your story about how you did this. But yeah,
Maybe we
just
need to talk him into getting on here,
yeah, I think we
telling
do.
us.
I think we do because he's an interesting guy and got some stories to tell.
What
Well,
one last thing before we get into our next topic? Did you ever hear of virtual technology subwoofers and enclosures?
I don't think so.
Okay, man. So this was my introduction to high efficiency box building and actually a slot port. Uh, the guy who showed me, I think he had a Mazda truck, and he had 200-watt amp. I wanted to say it was, I think it was the Punch 125 too. Anyways, he had a bridge at 4 ohms on that single sub, and he was doing on, of course, audio control mic. He was doing 147 dB for that single 12 in the factory box.
Wow.
And I mean, it was crazy. So I know some people know about those virtual technologies, but that was one brand. I mean, I'd like to get a hold of some of the boxes and subs today just to have them.
Sweet. Now, what I think, honestly, between you and I, we've been going almost an hour here. We have got a lot of other stuff to talk about in a different topic. I almost think, Rob, that we should hold that to the next episode because we honestly, you and I talking together, didn't think that we could go for an hour talking about how we got into car audio. But I think it's been a pretty good discussion, and I think we can
Yeah.
save. Let's save the next topic for the other. But I did have something else I was going to say, and I just lost my train of thought telling you that we were going to not go to the next topic. Man, what was I going to say? Um,
Okay. So are we in it? Are we closing it out, or you got something else going?
well, we'll talk about upcoming. We'll talk about
Okay.
upcoming videos and stuff that we're working on and projects we're working on, and also to let everybody know that's watching this or listening to it on a podcast. I'm not sure how you're going to get it delivered, but those who are watching it, just know that we are building these into podcasts, and hopefully within the next couple of episodes, will be accepted in iTunes and some other places. So we'll be able to have this so you can get on your phone. You can have the feed pulled up in Spotify or iTunes or however you get to your podcast, and you'll be able to listen to it on your way to work. Because Rob and I are both big podcast fans, and we don't hear a lot of car audio stuff and podcasts. And we're like, there was a guy who did it a while back, and he did great episodes and just stopped.
Yeah.
And so Rob and I are like, well, we may not be experts doing this, but we'll try. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And
And
shout out to the SQology guys that are doing their podcast because I do listen to that. We're kind of starving over here for audio, car audio centric uh, material in the podcast land, anyways.
right. So yeah, and any of you guys that are interested in doing something like this, I'd say go do it because more content the better. I think a lot of people, use YouTube as what they want to do and where they want to be, but I mean, not everybody has time to watch videos, but everybody drive or most people drive in a car or ride a bus or ride a train or whatever. And during that time, they don't want to really watch a video. They'll probably just listen to stuff. So that's what we're hoping, that we can grow, organically an audience by listening
Right.
to us blah 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 blah.
Couple big dummies.
That's right. And we don't know anything about being dummies because we get smart by reading books like this.
We got the book.
Yeah, this book, as funny as it is actually pretty good. So those of you who are getting started, if you just listen to this and getting started, Car Audio, get Car Audio for Dummies, because there's so much good material in here for those of you who don't know anything, and even those of us who do. There's some stuff in here that you can learn. So instead of trying to figure out everything on a forum or not forum, Facebook, sorry. Depending on what
Yeah.
year you're listening to this, not sure what your means of receiving information, but I know the way it works right now is you ask on Facebook and you get 25,000 different answers depending on what company somebody's sponsored by is how they're going to answer your question. But Rob, so tell me about some of the stuff you're working on for upcoming videos, or something you've recently done you want people to check out. Tell us what you got going
All
on.
right. So I've been doing a few little amp dynos here and there, and you get a lot of the big stuff and a lot of the old school big stuff. So I'm trying to fill in with the weird stuff, the Fultron or the kicker that nobody cared about, the IX at the time, which has actually turned out to be a cool amp. So I'm doing some of them. I got some suds back here. Do another shootout. Last one I just done on the Facebook group. This one will be all YouTube. So I've got a lot of suds worked out. I'm working on the video for the box build for it right now. And besides that, I'd like to get some history of, but man, it's so much. It's so hard to find that information that you can't just get it from anywhere. So outside of that, that's about all I've got. All I'm working on. What about you?
Cool. Well, yeah, Amp Dynos. Obviously, the most recent video I did was an Onkyo home theater receiver. So I try to mix it up a little bit. I enjoy doing things outside of car audio because I'm an audio geek. I enjoy home car, mini amps, everything. But something I got coming up that I like to do this every now and then. If you search on Amazon, sometimes you come across things that you're like, what? What's this? This brand, which I've said
Poorly
this,
named.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. Car audio companies, if you're new, I don't know if you guys have a language barrier or what, but when you come to the market, don't don't use a name like, well, Sony did it for years, but Explode or Ignite or Inferno. You don't need to use that as the name brand of your amplifier, right? Do you disagree, Robert?
Hey, 100%. I mean, you should send that amp when you're done testing it to Doug.
There you go.
Or
'Cause
not.
he could use that for his explosions.
Yeah.
But so this amp, it's got 4K written all over it, but it's a R1600, but it says 4,000 watts peak, but it's $75 shipped if you're Amazon Prime. So I got it in. I'm like, whatever. I'm gonna try it. So when you open the manual, it says 750 by 1 at 1 ohm. So that's still 10 cents a watt if it does 750 by 1.
RMS.
RMS. So, and it's got three 30 amp fuses. That's 90 amps of fusing. If we go by the
Awesome.
fuse theory as Class D, it should do that. So we're going to test that soon. I've been talking about it for a long time about the in-car tests, and I'm trying to get to that. Some of you know
Yes,
that
I'm eagerly awaiting over here.
we're eagerly awaiting, but we got a new hot rod, which we're going to talk about that in a future video as well, and talk about the whole process of trying to buy a car from 2,800 miles away and the stress and pain that I endured to get that vehicle here. But yeah, the Alpine PDX M12, I've had a lot of people ask me about this one since I tested the JL HD 1200, because these are kind of competing amps, even though the Alpine's quite a few $100s cheaper than the JL. So I want to
And
test
that's
it.
still not a cheap amp itself, really. I mean,
No, this is seven. Was it 700? Something like
yeah.
that. 799. Pretty expensive. So these are coming soon, and I'm sure you guys might have seen the PRV here. Brazilian. They call this a mids and high amp now, which is funny. So they don't want you using this for bass,
I
because
wouldn't even want to use it on my sub or mids
yeah.
or highs.
Well, we'll see. I'll try it. But this one's coming soon too. Got some other things as well, but yeah. The fun part will be showing off the car, the hot rod, and talk about what it's going to do and talk about how I bought it. Because to me, car audio, cars, home theater, all this stuff kind of fits together because we're audio geeks. We may be automotive geeks as well,
Right.
but I'm excited about showing that stuff off. So
I still stand behind you should have used U-Ship so you could get on that show, that reality show.
so I will talk about that, Mr. Vega, during the episode, and I hope that I won't be as long-winded as I've been tonight when I've been telling my stories. But I have got enough probably to write not maybe a book, but a good chapter of a book about the process of all that. So we're come to an end of episode 2 of 12 Volt Talk. If you go to 12vtalk.com, in the future, or maybe while you're listening to this, because I don't know when you're listening, we will have the podcast and stuff listed on that page. Right now, it forwards to my YouTube channel. We have a SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/12vtalk, but we're trying to get everything fed in to iTunes, to Stitcher, to Google, to all of them. We want to have it available everywhere, depending on, it doesn't matter what phone you have or what service you use. We're working on that. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Vega?
Check me out at youtube.com/hi-fi Vega. Check out Big D, youtube.com/old school stereo. And
that's
all I
one
got.
channel. We have two. The other one's youtube.com/BigDWiz. The old school stereo, and I don't put much stuff on, so sorry for the confusion. But that's just me. I messed up. I confuse everybody with that. But yeah. So we didn't get your son to record his outro yet, did we?
No.
Okay.
I could get him to do it live.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Like, just vamp for like 30, 45 seconds.
Okay. While he's walking away to get the outro, Mr. Vega talked earlier about Crutchfield. And Crutchfield's in Virginia, which is just north of North Carolina where I'm at. They've been around for a long time. 1974. I still enjoy getting these in the mail and going through the Crutchfields and looking at the pictures. And man, if I lived in Virginia near Charlottesville, I would do anything I could to work at this place. That would be like the dream job. These guys get to test speakers all day. They get to test amps. And it sounds like Mr. Mini Hi-Fi is in the house. He's hiding.
All right.
Is he going to give us our outro?
All right. On the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
We're out of here.
Oh, come on. Get louder than that. Ready?
I thought you were going to do it with me.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
We're out of here.
Perfect. See you guys.
All right.